When Michael Jordan walks into the Golden Plate restaurant and meets waitress Zora Wilson, a hard-working single mom struggling to pay for her daughter's basketball camp, a simple compliment changes everything. After Jordan praises Zora's dedication to her basketball-loving daughter and leaves her a generous tip, her jealous boss Vernon fires her the very next day, claiming she bothered the famous guest. Little does Vernon know that his petty revenge will backfire spectacularly. Within 48 hours, Jordan discovers what happened and sets in motion a plan that will not only help Zora, but completely upend Vernon's world. As Zora soon learns, sometimes the worst endings lead to the most unexpected new beginnings. Zora Wilson's feet ached as she hurried through the busy kitchen of the Golden Plate restaurant. 6 hours into her shift, she still had 2 more to go. Her black uniform shoes pinched her toes with every step, but she kept a smile on her face. That smile meant better tips, and better tips meant she could finally pay for Amara's basketball. "Camp, order up for table 12, Chef Marco called, sliding 2 plates of steaming steak onto the counter. "Got it," Zora said, balancing the heavy plates on her arm with the skill that came from 8 years of waitressing. As she pushed through the swinging doors into the dining room, Zora took a deep breath. The Golden Plate was the fanciest restaurant in this part of Chicago. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Soft music played. Men in expensive suits and women in shiny dresses talked and laughed over their meals. Zora didn't belong here. Not really. But the tips were good, and her boss, Vernon Reeves, paid a little better than other restaurants in the area. Just enough to keep her and 10-year-old Amara in their small apartment on the south side. "Here you are," Zora said, placing the steaks in front of an older couple at table 12. "Can I get you anything else?" "We're fine, thank you," the man said without looking up. Zora nodded and turned away. Some customers never really saw her. She was just the hands that brought their food. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Quickly, she ducked behind a pillar and checked it. A text from Mrs. Jenkins next door, who was watching Amara. Amara finished her homework. "She's practicing her free throws with that little basket you got her. Says to tell you she made 10 in a row." Zora smiled and texted back a quick thank you with heart emojis for Amara. That little basketball hoop had been a birthday present, found at a second-hand store but cleaned up to look almost new. Amara had cried happy tears when she opened it. "Wilson! Phone away! Now!" Zora jumped and shoved the phone back in her pocket. Vernon stood there, his round face tight with anger. He was a short man who always wore suits too big for him, like he was playing dress-up in his dad's clothes. "Sorry, Mr. Reeves. It was my daughter's babysitter." "I don't care if it was the president. No phones on the floor. You know the rules." Vernon's eyes narrowed. "Table 7 needs water refills, and table 15 just got seated. 4 customers. Your section." "Yes, sir. Right away." Vernon watched her for a moment longer before walking away. Zora let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She couldn't afford to make him angry. Not when Amara's basketball camp payment was due in 2 weeks. Zora grabbed a pitcher of ice water and headed to table 7. As she rounded the corner, she froze. Sitting at table 15, her new table, was a face she knew from TV, magazines, and Amara's bedroom wall poster. Michael Jordan. The basketball legend sat with 3 other men in business suits. They were laughing about something, their voices low and comfortable. Jordan himself wore a simple black sweater that probably cost more than Zora's monthly rent. "Oh my goodness," Zora whispered to herself. She quickly filled the waters at table 7 and rushed to the waitress station where her friend Letitia was folding napkins. "Letitia! Michael Jordan is at table 15! Letitia's eyes widened. For real? The Michael Jordan? Chicago Bulls? Michael Jordan? Yes. And he's in my section. Zora's hands trembled as she grabbed menus. Amara is going to flip out. She has his poster above her bed. Girl, you better get over there before Vernon decides to take the table himself. You know how he gets with famous people. Letitia straightened Zora's collar quickly. There, perfect. Now go. Zora took a deep breath and walked toward table 15, menus in hand. Be professional, she told herself. He's just another customer. But he wasn't. This was the man her daughter called the greatest ever. The reason Amara woke up early every morning to practice dribbling. The reason she begged for basketball camp this summer, even though it cost nearly a month's rent. Good evening, gentlemen, Zora said, proud that her voice didn't shake. Welcome to the Golden Plate. My name is Zora, and I'll be your server tonight. She placed menus in front of each man. When she reached Jordan, he looked up at her with a polite smile and a nod. Can I start you with some drinks? She asked. One of the men ordered an expensive bottle of wine. Zora wrote it down carefully, aware that Jordan was watching her with curious eyes. I'll be right back with your wine, Zora said, turning to leave. Actually, Jordan's deep voice stopped her. Could we get some of those famous Golden Plate house rolls first? I've heard they're amazing. Of course, sir. Right away. As Zora walked back to the kitchen, she could feel Vernon watching her from across the restaurant. His eyes followed her every move, like a hawk watching a mouse. In the kitchen, Zora's hands shook as she filled a bread basket with warm rolls. You okay? Chef Marco asked, noticing her trembling fingers. Michael Jordan is at table 15, Zora whispered. Marco's eyebrows shot up. No way! The basketball player? Zora nodded. My daughter Amara is going to die when I tell her. Your little girl plays basketball, right? You're always talking about her games. She loves it more than anything, Zora said, smiling proudly. She's saving her change to help pay for basketball camp this summer. Marco smiled. Maybe you'll get a good tip from Jordan. That would help with the camp fees. I'm just trying not to drop anything or say something stupid, Zora laughed nervously. When she returned to the table with bread and wine, the men were discussing business. Something about a new sports center in the city. Zora poured the wine. Carefully, making sure not to interrupt. Are you ready to order? She asked when they paused in conversation. The men ordered steaks and seafood. Jordan chose the house special. As Zora wrote down their orders, she noticed Jordan looking at her name tag. Zora, he said. That's a beautiful name. Is it short or something? No, sir, she replied, surprised by the personal question. My mom loved books. She named me after Zora Neale Hurston, the writer. Jordan nodded appreciatively. Good, strong name. Zora couldn't help herself. My daughter Amara is a huge fan of yours, Mr. Jordan. She plays basketball every chance she gets. One of the other men at the table laughed. Everyone's a fan of Michael's, but Jordan seemed genuinely interested. How old is your daughter? 10, Zora said. She's saving up for basketball camp this summer. She has your poster on her wall and everything. Do you have a picture? Jordan asked. Zora hesitated, remembering Vernon's strict rule about keeping conversations professional. But Michael Jordan was asking to see a picture of Amara. How could she say no? I do, she said, pulling out her phone. She found a recent photo of Amara in her school basketball uniform, holding a trophy from a small tournament her team had won. She showed Jordan the picture. He took the phone gently and smiled at the image of the small girl with brown skin and bright eyes, beaming, with pride in her blue and white uniform. She's got good form, Jordan said, pointing to how Amara held the ball in the photo. Look at that confidence. The other men at the table leaned in to see. She's practicing every day for camp, Zora said, taking the phone back. She wants to be the best player there. With that attitude, I bet she will be, Jordan said. Then, he added, you're raising a future star. That takes real strength and dedication. I respect that. Zora felt warmth spread through her chest. Michael Jordan respected her? A single mom waiting tables to make ends meet? Thank you, Mr. Jordan. That means a lot. From across the room, Vernon was watching with narrowed eyes. Zora noticed his stare and quickly excused herself to put in their food orders. The rest of their meal went smoothly. Zora made sure their water glasses stayed full and brought extra sauce when asked. The men talked and laughed, and sometimes Jordan would look up and give her a kind smile when she approached the table. When it was time for the check, one of the men handed over a credit card. Jordan excused himself to use the restroom, and when he returned, the others were ready to leave. As they stood up, Jordan turned to Zora. "Wait 1 second," he said. He took a napkin from the table and pulled a pen from his pocket. He scribbled something on it and handed it to her. "For Amara." Zora looked down at the napkin. On it was Jordan's famous signature and a small note. "Keep shooting for the stars, Amara." "Thank you so much," Zora said, her voice barely a whisper. "She'll treasure this forever." Jordan smiled. "Tell her to keep practicing those free throws. That's where games are won." The men left, but Jordan turned back at the door and gave Zora a small wave. She waved back, clutching the autographed napkin in her hand. When she picked up the leather folder with the bill, she opened it and gasped. Along with the signed credit card slip was 5 $100 bills, a $500 tip on a $350 meal. Tears filled Zora's eyes. This was it. Enough to pay for Amara's basketball camp with money left over for new shoes. "Thank you," she whispered, even though Jordan was long gone. As she tucked the money safely in her pocket, Zora didn't notice Vernon watching her from his office doorway, his face dark with jealousy and anger. All she could think about was the look on Amara's face when she told her about meeting Michael Jordan, and that she could go to basketball camp after all. Little did Zora know that this wonderful night, this unexpected compliment from a basketball legend, would turn her life upside down by tomorrow morning. Zora woke up early, as she always did. The sun was just starting to peek through the thin curtains of their small apartment. She moved quietly, trying not to wake Amara, who was still sleeping, her arms wrapped around her basketball. Last night, after her shift ended, Zora had rushed home to tell Amara about meeting Michael Jordan. The little girl's eyes had grown wide with wonder. "He really said I had good form?" Amara had asked for the third time, clutching the autographed napkin like it was made of gold. "He sure did," Zora had replied, pulling out the tip money. "And look what else he did. Now you can go to basketball camp for sure." Amara had jumped up and down on her bed, too excited to sleep for at least another hour. Now, as Zora made breakfast, she hummed a happy tune. For once, things were looking up. The basketball camp was covered, and they even had extra for new shoes. Maybe their luck was finally changing. Her phone rang. It was Vernon. Strange. He never called her this early. "Hello?" "Zora, I need you to come in at 9 instead of noon today," Vernon said, his voice oddly flat. "Is everything okay?" "Just be here at 9. He hung up. Zora frowned at her phone. That was weird. But maybe someone had called in sick. Extra hours meant extra money, so she couldn't complain. "Mom!" Amara stood in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Can I bring my napkin to school to show my friends? Zora smiled. How about we take a picture of it instead? That way, it won't get dirty or lost. Good idea. Amara nodded seriously. I'm gonna keep it forever. After getting Amara ready for school and dropping her off, Zora headed to the Golden Plate. Satihi, restaurant wouldn't open until 11, so the dining room was empty when she arrived. Vernon wants to see you in his office, said Letitia, who was setting up the waitress station. She looked worried. Is everything okay? I don't know, Zora said. He called me to come in early. Well, good luck. Letitia squeezed her arm. He's in a mood today. Zora knocked on Vernon's office door. Come in, he called. The office was small but fancy, with pictures of Vernon shaking hands with local celebrities hanging on the walls. Vernon sat behind his desk, his face serious. Close the door. Zora did as she was told, a bad feeling growing in her stomach. Sit down, Zora. She sat in the chair across from him. Is something wrong? Vernon leaned forward, placing his hands flat on the desk. Last night, you served Michael Jordan. Yes, he was very nice. And you showed him a picture of your daughter. Zora hesitated. Yes, he asked about her. Vernon's eyes narrowed. You bothered a celebrity guest with personal pictures. You broke restaurant policy about keeping conversations professional. I didn't bother him, Zora said, confused. He asked to see. Then you accepted a large tip and an autograph, which could be seen as asking for special treatment. I didn't ask for anything, Zora's voice rose. Mr. Jordan offered the tip himself, and the autograph was for my daughter. Vernon stood up suddenly, his chair rolling back. The point is, you created an uncomfortable situation for an important guest. But he wasn't uncomfortable. He was friendly and Zora. Vernon slammed his hand on the desk. This isn't the first time you've broken rules. Last month you were late twice. Before that, you took food home without permission. That was leftover bread that was going to be thrown away, Zora protested. Chef Marco said, it doesn't matter what Marco said. I'm the boss here. Vernon pulled a paper from his desk. I'm terminating your employment, effective immediately. The words hit Zora like a punch to the stomach. You're firing me? For what? For talking to Michael Jordan? For unprofessional behavior and multiple policy violations. Vernon slid the paper toward her. Sign this. Zora's hands trembled as she picked up the paper. It was a termination notice that made it sound like she had done terrible things, like she was a bad employee. This isn't true. Sign it, or you won't get your final check. Tears burned in Zora's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not in front of Vernon. She signed the paper, her name shaky on the line. Your final paycheck will be mailed next week. Vernon took the paper back. Please return your name tag and uniform by Friday. Zora unclipped her name tag and placed it on the desk with a small click that seemed to echo in the quiet office. This isn't fair, and you know it. Vernon shrugged. Life isn't fair. You should know that by now. The cruel words stung, but Zora held her head high as she stood up. Mr. Jordan asked to see that picture. He left that tip because he wanted to. You're firing me for making a customer happy. I'm firing you because I can, Vernon said coldly. Now, please leave before I call security. Zora walked out of the office, past Letitia, who was watching with worried eyes, and through the empty dining room. Outside, the morning sun felt too bright, too cheerful for what had just happened. On the bus ride home, reality hit her hard. No job meant no rent money. No job meant no food money. The basketball camp was covered, but what about everything else? Her phone buzzed with a text from Leticia. What happened? Are you okay? Zora texted back. He fired me. Said I bothered Jordan. Letitia's reply came quickly. What? That's crazy. Jordan looked happy talking to you. Vernon didn't care. Said I broke. Policy. That's bull. Everyone knows Vernon just gets jealous when customers like us better than him. Zora put her phone away as the bus reached her stop. She walked slowly to her apartment, her mind racing. She had to find a new job, fast. The rent was due in 2 weeks. Maybe the coffee shop down the street was hiring? Or the grocery store? Inside her empty apartment, Zora sat at the kitchen table and put her head in her hands. For the first time since leaving Vernon's office, she let the tears fall. How would she tell Amara? How could she explain that their money problems just got worse because some man with a fragile ego got jealous? The worst part was that last night had been so good. For a few hours, Zora had felt like things were getting better. Michael Jordan had seen her, really seen her, as a person, as a mother doing her best, and now she was being punished for it. She wiped her tears away and pulled out her phone. Time to look for job listings. She couldn't waste time feeling sorry for herself. She had to be strong for Amara. Hours later, after sending out applications to 12 different places, Zora heard Amara's key in the door. She quickly wiped her face and put on a smile. "Mom, why are you home?" Amara asked, dropping her backpack by the door. "I thought you had work at noon." "I did, but—" Zora patted the couch beside her. "Come sit down, honey. I need to talk to you about something." Amara's smile faded as she sat down. "Did something bad happen?" Zora took a deep breath. "I lost my job today." "Because of me?" Amara asked in a small voice. "Because you showed Mr. Jordan my picture?" "No, baby. Not because of you." Zora pulled her daughter close. "My boss was being unfair. That's all." "But what about rent? And food?" Amara was too smart for her age, too aware of their financial struggles. "I'll find a new job. A better one." Zora tried to sound confident. "We'll be okay." "What about basketball camp?" Amara's voice trembled. Zora thought of the $500 tip, safely hidden in her dresser drawer. "You're still going to camp. I promise." Amara hugged her tightly. "It's okay if I don't. We need money for important stuff." "You are important stuff," Zora said firmly. "And you're going to camp." But as Amara went to her room to start homework, Zora stared at the bills on the kitchen counter. Even with the $500, they wouldn't last long without her salary. The camp would take most of that money. Maybe Amara was right. Maybe they couldn't afford basketball camp now. The thought broke Zora's heart. That night, after Amara went to bed, Zora found the autographed napkin. She stared at Michael Jordan's signature and his message. "Keep shooting for the stars, Amara." "I'm trying," Zora whispered to the empty room. "But right now, those stars seem very far away." Morning came too quickly. Zora had barely slept, her mind racing with worries about bills and jobs. She made Amara's lunch with a forced smile and sent her off to school with a hug that lasted a little longer than usual. "It'll be okay, Mom," Amara said, patting Zora's back. "You're the strongest person I know." Those words kept Zora going as she spent the day walking from business to business, filling out applications. The coffee shop wasn't hiring. The grocery store wanted someone with more experience. The hotel downtown only had night shifts that would leave Amara alone too much. By afternoon, Zora's feet hurt, and her hope was fading. She sat on a bench in the small park near their apartment, looking at her phone. 10 applications submitted, and not a single call back. Her phone rang suddenly, making her jump. It was Tanisha, her best friend since high school. "Girl, Letitia just called me. She told me what that jerk Vernon did." Tanisha's voice was loud with anger. "He fired you because Michael Jordan liked you better than him? That's the stupidest thing I ever heard." "I know," Zora sighed, "but it doesn't matter why. What matters is I need a new job, fast." "Actually, that's why I'm calling," Tanisha said. "The grocery store where I work needs someone for overnight stocking. It's not great hours, but it's better than nothing." Zora's heart lifted slightly. "Overnight? What time?" 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 5 nights a week, Tanisha replied. "I know it's rough with Amara, but my sister could watch her at your place so she can sleep in her own bed." Zora thought quickly. Overnight work would mean she'd barely see Amara. She'd be sleeping when Amara was at school and working when Amara was home, but they needed the money. "I'll take it," she said. "Can you put in a good word for me?" "Already did. Manager says you can start tomorrow night. It doesn't pay as much as the Golden Plate, though." "How much less?" Zora asked, already, doing the math in her head. When Tanisha told her the hourly rate, Zora's heart sank. It was nearly half what she made in wages at the restaurant, and without tips. But it was something. "Thanks, T. I really appreciate it." After they hung up, Zora stared at the basketball court across the park where some kids were playing. One girl about Amara's age was dribbling well, moving quickly between the older boys. It reminded Zora of the basketball camp forms in her bag. She pulled them out and looked at the due date. Payment needed by Friday. 3 days away. With a heavy heart, Zora dialed the number on the form. "Chicago Youth Basketball Camp. How can I help you?" A cheerful voice answered. "Hi, this is Zora Wilson. My daughter Amara is registered for the summer session." Zora's voice caught. "I need to cancel her spot." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. May I ask why? We might be able to work something out." "I just lost my job," Zora explained. "And while I have a new one lined up, it doesn't pay as much. I need to use the money for rent." "I understand," the voice said, softer now. "Would a payment plan help? We could split it into 3 payments." Zora did the math quickly. Even spread out, the payments would take too much of her new, smaller paycheck. "That's very kind, but I don't think I can commit to that right now." "All right, Ms. Wilson. I've canceled Amara's registration. If things change, please call us back. We'd love to have her." "Thank you," Zora said, fighting back tears as she hung up. That night, after making Amara's favorite dinner of spaghetti and meatballs, Zora sat her daughter down for another difficult conversation. "I found a new job," she began. Amara's face lit up. "That's great, Mom." "It is, but there's some not-so-great news, too," Zora continued. "The job is overnight stocking at the grocery store where Aunt Tanisha works." "Overnight? So you'll be gone? When I'm sleeping?" Zora nodded. "Aunt Tanisha's sister will stay here with you, and I'll be home in time to make you breakfast before school." Amara thought about this. "So, when will you sleep?" "During the day, while you're at school." "So I won't see you much?" Zora's heart broke a little at the sad look on Amara's face. "Not as much as before, but it's just temporary, until I find something better." "Okay," Amara said quietly. Then she added, "Is this why you canceled my basketball camp?" Zora looked up, surprised. "How did you know about that?" "Coach Miller called me after school. He said he was sorry I couldn't come to camp this summer." Zora pulled Amara into a hug. I'm so sorry, baby. I wanted you to go so badly. But the new job doesn't pay as much. And we need to be careful with money right now. Amara hugged her back tightly. It's okay. I don't need basketball camp. But Zora could hear the disappointment in her voice. Later that night, after tucking Amara in, Zora returned to the kitchen table where she'd spread out all their bills. Rent, electricity, phone, food, school supplies. Even with the overnight job and using Jordan's tip, they would barely make it through the month. Zora put her head in her hands. How had things fallen apart so quickly? Just 2 days ago, everything seemed to be looking up. Now she was facing a job she'd never see her daughter, less money, and Amara's big dream put on hold. The worst part was knowing that she'd done nothing wrong. Vernon had fired her out of pure jealousy, and there was nothing she could do about it. A small sound made her look up. Amara stood in the hallway in her pajamas, Michael Jordan's autographed napkin in her hand. Mom, can we sell this? Maybe someone would pay enough for my camp. Zora shook her head and opened her arms. Amara came over and climbed into her lap, something she hadn't done in a long time. That napkin is special, Zora said, kissing the top of Amara's head. It's not about the money. It's about someone seeing how amazing you are. We're keeping it. But I want to help, Amara said, her voice small. You help by being you, Zora assured her. By working hard at school and basketball. By being the kind, smart girl you are. After Amara went back to bed, Zora found herself staring at the napkin again. On impulse, she took out her phone and snapped a picture of it. She posted it on social media with a simple caption, "My daughter Amara met her hero Michael Jordan through his autograph. Her dream of basketball camp is on hold now that I lost my job. But dreams don't die easily. We'll find a way." She didn't expect anything from the post. She just needed to put something positive out into the world, to remind herself that things could get better. The next day was a blur of preparation for her new overnight job. Tanisha's sister came over to learn the apartment routines and where everything was kept. Zora took a nap in the afternoon, trying to adjust to her new schedule. When she woke up, there was a message from the basketball camp. Confused, Zora called, "Them back. Ms. Wilson? We're calling about Amara's registration," the same cheerful voice said. "I canceled it yesterday," Zora reminded them. "Yes, but someone has paid for Amara's spot in full. An anonymous donor." Zora sat up straight. "What? Who?" They asked to remain anonymous. They just said they believe in Amara's dream. After hanging up, Zora checked her social media post. It had hundreds of likes and shares. Could someone who saw it have paid for the camp? That night, as she prepared for her first overnight shift, Zora felt a small flame of hope return. There were good people in the world, people who believed in dreams. Maybe those stars weren't so far away after all. Zora's first 2 nights at the grocery store were harder than she expected. Her body ached from lifting heavy boxes and stocking shelves. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep as she tried to adjust to being awake all night and sleeping during the day. But Amara's excitement about still going to basketball camp made it all worthwhile. Her daughter had bounced around their apartment when Zora told her the news, her smile brighter than Zora had seen in days. "Someone really paid for me to go?" Amara had asked, eyes wide. "Like a basketball fairy godmother?" The image had made Zora laugh. "Something like that. Someone who believes in your dream." By the 3rd day after being fired from the Golden Plate, Zora had fallen into a new routine. She would come home from her shift at 6:30 a.m., make breakfast for Amara, see her off to school, then sleep until 3 p.m. when Amara came home. They'd have a few hours together before Tanisha's sister arrived at 9 p.m., and Zora would head back to work. It wasn't ideal. Zora missed having real time with her daughter. She missed the sun. She missed tips that helped them get ahead instead of just barely scraping by. But they were managing. That afternoon, Zora was in the kitchen making an early dinner. Tonight's meal was simple: chicken, rice, and vegetables. But she tried to make it special by using the fancy plates they usually saved for birthdays. "Homework done?" she called to Amara, who was in the living room. "Almost. Just one more math problem." Zora smiled. Despite everything, Amara was staying focused on school. That girl was stronger than most grown-ups Zora knew. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Zora frowned. They weren't expecting anyone. She wiped her hands on a towel and went to the door. "Who is it?" she called, peering through the peephole. A man she didn't recognize stood in the hallway. He was tall and well-dressed in a gray suit that looked expensive. He had dark skin and short, neatly trimmed hair with touches of gray at the temples. "My name is Darius Taylor," the man said. "I'm looking for Zora Wilson." Zora hesitated. "What's this about?" "I work for Michael Jordan. He asked me to speak with you." Zora's heart skipped a beat. Michael Jordan sent someone to talk to her? Was this about the napkin? Did he think she was selling his autograph? Cautiously, she opened the door but kept the security chain on. "Can I see some ID?" The man, Darius, nodded approvingly and took out a business card and an ID badge. The business card read, "Darius Taylor, Executive Assistant to Michael Jordan," with a company logo. The badge showed his picture and the same company name. After checking the ID, Zora removed the chain and opened the door wider. "Sorry for being careful. It's just my daughter and me here." "No need to apologize," Darius said with a warm smile. "It's smart to be cautious." "Mom? Who is it?" Amara appeared, beside Zora, looking curiously at their visitor. "This is Mr. Taylor," Zora explained. "He works for Michael Jordan." Amara's eyes went wide. "The Michael Jordan? Is he here too?" Darius laughed. "Not today, but he did send me to talk to your mom." He looked at Zora. "May I come in? I won't take much of your time." Zora nodded and stepped back to let him enter their small apartment. She felt suddenly self-conscious about the worn furniture and the peeling paint in the corner of the living room. "Please, have a seat," she said, gesturing to the couch. "Would you like some water?" "That would be nice, thank you." While Zora went to get water, Amara stared at Darius with undisguised curiosity. "Do you watch Mr. Jordan play basketball?" she asked. "I did," Darius replied. "And now I help him with his businesses. I hear you're quite the basketball player yourself." Amara grinned. "I'm going to basketball camp this summer. Someone paid for me to go, even though Mom lost her job." Zora returned with a glass of water, catching the end of Amara's comment. "Amara, why don't you finish your homework in your room while I talk to Mr. Taylor?" Once Amara had reluctantly gone to her room, Zora sat down across from Darius. "So, what does Michael Jordan want with me?" Darius took a sip of water before answering. "Mr. Jordan was impressed by you when he visited the Golden Plate. He remembered your daughter's photo and your conversation." "That's nice to hear," Zora said cautiously. "He'd like to invite Amara to a special basketball clinic he's hosting next month. It's for promising young players. All expenses paid." Zora's mouth fell open. "Are you serious? Amara would be thrilled, but—" She hesitated, looking down at her hands. Darius leaned forward slightly. "Is something wrong, Ms. Wilson?" Zora sighed. "I lost my job at the Golden Plate the day after Mr. Jordan visited. Darius's eyebrows shot up. May I ask what happened? My boss, Vernon, fired me. He claimed I bothered Mr. Jordan by showing him Amara's picture and talking about her. Zora's voice grew bitter. He said I was unprofessional and created an uncomfortable situation for an important guest. That's ridiculous, Darius said, frowning. Mr. Jordan specifically mentioned to me how refreshing it was to meet someone genuine who clearly cared about their child's dreams. Try telling that to Vernon, Zora said with a sad laugh. He made up his mind. I think he was jealous that Mr. Jordan talked to me more than to him. I see. Darius's expression had turned serious. And you've found new employment? Night shift. At a grocery store. It pays a lot less, and the hours mean I barely see Amara. But it's something. Darius was quiet for a moment, studying her. Then he pulled out his phone. Would you excuse me for a moment? I need to make a call. Of course. Darius stepped into the kitchen, speaking quietly. Zora couldn't make out what he was saying, but she caught Mr. Jordan's name several times. After a few minutes, Darius returned and sat down again. Ms. Wilson, Mr. Jordan would like to meet with you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Zora blinked in surprise. With me? Why? He'd like to discuss the situation with the golden plate in person. Darius handed her a business card with an address written on the back. This is where you'll meet. A car will pick you up at 9:30. I can't just... Zora gestured vaguely around the apartment. I mean, I need to sleep during the day because of my night shift. And Amara, Mr. Jordan understands you're working nights now. The meeting won't take long. As for your daughter, perhaps a neighbor could watch her, or she could come along and wait in the reception area. Zora thought about it. Tanisha might be able to watch Amara for an hour or two, and she couldn't deny she was curious about why Michael Jordan wanted to meet with her. All right, she said finally. I'll be ready at 9:30 tomorrow. Excellent! Darius stood up, straightening his suit jacket. One more thing, Ms. Wilson. Mr. Jordan asked me to give you this. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a check for $2,000. Zora gasped. I can't accept this. It's not charity, Darius said firmly. Consider it an advance for your consulting services. Consulting services? What consulting services? Darius smiled. Mr. Jordan values your insights. He'll explain everything tomorrow. After Darius left, Amara burst out of her room. What did he say? Am I going to meet Michael Jordan? Zora was still staring at the check in her hand. $2,000. That would cover rent, bills, and give them some breathing room while she looked for a better job. Mom? Amara tugged at her arm. What did the man say? Zora finally looked up. He said, Mr. Jordan wants to meet with me tomorrow. Can I come? Please, please, please. Not this time, sweetie. But he's invited you to a special basketball clinic next month. Amara's shriek of joy was so loud that Mrs. Perez from next door knocked on the wall. That night, as Zora stocked canned goods at the grocery store, her mind kept drifting to tomorrow's meeting. Why would Michael Jordan care that she'd been fired? What did he mean by consulting services? Was this all because she'd posted about the autographed napkin on social media? You okay? Tanisha asked during their break. You look like your brain is somewhere else. Zora told her about Darius's visit and the meeting tomorrow. Tanisha's eyes grew wider with each word. Girl, this is like a movie. What do you think he wants? I have no idea, Zora admitted, but I'm going to find out. The next morning, after her shift, Zora dropped Amara at Tanisha's apartment and returned home to shower and change. She put on her nicest outfit, a simple blue dress she usually saved for job interviews, and tried to cover the dark circles under her eyes with makeup. At exactly 9:30, her phone buzzed with a text. A car was waiting downstairs. Outside, a sleek, black car with tinted windows was parked at the curb. The driver, a middle-aged man in a suit, opened the door for her. "Good morning, Ms. Wilson. I'll be taking you to your meeting with Mr. Jordan." As the car pulled away from her apartment building, Zora took a deep breath. Yesterday, she'd been a fired waitress working night shifts to make ends meet. Today, she was being driven in a fancy car to meet one of the most famous athletes in the world. Life could change in an instant, sometimes for the worse, like when Vernon fired her, but sometimes, just maybe, for the better. The car turned onto Michigan Avenue, heading toward downtown Chicago. Zora stared out the window at the gleaming skyscrapers ahead, wondering what waited for her there. After about 20 minutes, the car pulled up to a modern glass building with the name MJ Enterprises on the front. The driver opened Zora's door. "23rd floor, Ms. Wilson. They're expecting you." The lobby was all marble and glass, with a security desk where Zora had to show her ID and sign in. The guard gave her a visitor badge and directed her to a special elevator. "Good morning, Ms. Wilson," the elevator attendant said as she entered. "Mr. Jordan's office is on the top floor." Zora's stomach fluttered with nerves. Everything was so fancy. The thick carpet, the soft lighting, even the smell of the air felt expensive. She didn't belong here in her simple blue dress and worn shoes. The elevator doors opened to reveal a large reception area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Darius Taylor stood waiting for her. "Ms. Wilson, thank you for coming," he said, shaking her hand. "Right this way." He led her down a hallway lined with framed basketball jerseys and photographs of Michael Jordan with famous people. Presidents, movie stars, other athletes, all smiling beside the basketball legend. "Mr. Jordan is just finishing a call," Darius explained, stopping at a large wooden door. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "Water would be nice," Zora said, her throat suddenly dry. While Darius went to get her water, Zora took deep breaths to calm herself. What was she doing here? This world of luxury and power was completely foreign to her. Darius returned with a glass of water and knocked on the door. A deep voice called, "Come in." The office was huge, with windows offering a stunning view of Lake Michigan. Basketball memorabilia filled glass cases along one wall. A large desk sat in the center, and behind it, in a high-backed leather chair, was Michael Jordan himself. He stood as they entered, his tall frame even more impressive in person than it had been at the restaurant. He wore a perfectly tailored gray suit that probably cost more than Zora's rent for a year. "Ms. Wilson, thank you for coming," Jordan said, his voice warm and professional as he walked around the desk to shake her hand. "Please, have a seat." Zora sat in one of the comfortable chairs facing his desk, clutching her glass of water like a lifeline. "I appreciate you taking time to meet with me," she said carefully, "especially since I know you must be very busy." Jordan smiled. "I make time for important matters, and what happened to you because of my visit to the Golden Plate is important." He returned to his chair and leaned forward, his expression serious. "Darius told me you were fired. I'd like to hear exactly what happened, in your own words." Zora took a sip of water, then explained everything. Vernon calling her in early, his accusations about bothering Jordan, the termination notice she was forced to sign. "He claimed I created an uncomfortable situation for you," she finished. "But I didn't, did I?" "Not at all," Jordan said firmly. I asked about your daughter. I requested to see her photo. I offered the tip and autograph freely. He shook his head. Vernon had no right to do that, especially not using my name as an excuse. Thank you for saying that, Zora said, relief washing over her. But I still don't understand why you wanted to meet with me. Why does this matter to you? Jordan leaned back in his chair. When someone uses my name to justify something wrong, it matters to me. But there's more to it than that. He gestured to Darius, who handed him a folder. Ms. Wilson, do you know what I do now that I'm retired from basketball? You own the Charlotte Hornets, Zora said. And you have your shoe brand. And, I guess, businesses like this building? Jordan nodded. I have many business interests, including restaurants and community programs here in Chicago. This city gave me so much during my career. I believe in giving back. He opened the folder. I had Darius do some research on Vernon Reeves and the Golden Plate. What we found was troubling. Jordan slid several papers across the desk. They were statements from former employees of the Golden Plate, all describing unfair treatment by Vernon. Servers fired without cause. Tips kept by management. Verbal abuse. You're not the first person Vernon has treated poorly, Jordan said. But your situation caught my attention because he used my name. Zora looked up from the papers. So what happens now? That depends partly on you. Jordan closed the folder. I have an offer to make. 2 offers, actually. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. First, I'd like to offer you a job. Not at a restaurant, but here at MJ Enterprises. Zora blinked in surprise. A job? Doing what? Managing community outreach for my charity foundation, Jordan said, turning back to face her. Organizing basketball, clinics for underprivileged kids, creating programs for families who need support. The pay would be significantly better than what you made at the Golden Plate, and the hours would allow you to be home with Amara in the evenings. Zora was stunned. That sounds amazing, but I don't have experience in that kind of role. I've been a waitress for years, Jordan smiled. You raised a daughter alone while working multiple jobs. That's all the experience in determination and hard work I need to see. He returned to his desk. Darius tells me your daughter is talented at basketball and passionate about it. That you work extra shifts to support her dream. She loves the game, Zora said simply. She practices every day. That kind of dedication needs nurturing, Jordan said. And you understand the challenges families face when trying to support their children's dreams. That perspective would be valuable to our foundation. Zora's mind was spinning. A job with regular hours, better pay, doing something meaningful instead of stocking shelves all night? This is incredibly generous, she said finally. But why me? There must be people with actual qualifications who would want this job. Qualifications can be taught, Jordan replied. Character can't. You showed character at the restaurant. You showed it again by protecting your daughter when you lost your job. And you're showing it now by questioning an opportunity most people would grab without thinking. He leaned forward. The second offer is about Vernon. What about him? I'd like your permission to address the situation at the Golden Plate, to make it clear that he lied about your interaction with me. Zora hesitated. How would you do that? Have options, Jordan said. Legal options, since he used my name falsely. Business options, as I have connections with restaurant associations and suppliers. Or simply public options. My opinion still carries weight in this city. He watched her face carefully. But I won't do anything without your agreement. This is your fight, not mine. I'm just offering to help. Zora thought about Vernon's smug face when he fired her, about the other employees he'd mistreated according to those statements, about how he'd made her sign a false termination notice that could hurt her chances at other jobs. "I don't want revenge," she said slowly. "But I do want justice. Not just for me, but for everyone else he's treated badly." Jordan nodded. "Then we're on the same page." They talked for another hour, with Darius taking notes and occasionally adding information. Jordan explained more about the foundation job, the salary, which was 3 times what Zora made at the restaurant, and the benefits, which included health insurance for both her and Amara. "When could you start?" Jordan asked. "I'd need to give notice at the grocery store," Zora said. "They've been good to me, giving me a job when I needed it." "I respect that," Jordan said with approval. "How about 2 weeks from now?" "That would work," Zora agreed, still feeling like she might wake up from this dream at any moment. As the meeting wrapped up, Jordan walked Zora to the door. "There's one more thing," he said. "Darius mentioned that someone paid for your daughter's basketball camp after you posted about losing your job." Zora nodded. "Yes, an anonymous donor. It was a blessing after everything that happened." Jordan smiled. "Sometimes the world has a way of balancing things out. I'm glad Amara will get to attend the camp." "Me too," Zora said. "It means everything to her." In the elevator going down, Zora finally let herself believe this was real. She had a new job. A better job. Michael Jordan himself had offered it to her, and he was going to make sure Vernon faced consequences for his actions. The same driver was waiting to take her home. As the car pulled away from the gleaming building, Zora looked down at the business card Jordan had given her with his direct number. "If you have any questions or concerns, call me," he had said. "My team is your team now." Zora couldn't wait to tell Amara. Not just about the job, but about the special basketball clinic Jordan had invited her to. Her daughter would be over the moon. For the first time since being fired, Zora felt hope, real hope. Not just the desperate kind that gets you through another day. At a red light, the driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Good meeting?" Zora smiled. "Life-changing." By the time the car pulled up to her apartment building, Zora had already texted Tanisha to tell her the incredible news. Her friend's response was a string of shocked emojis followed by, "Girl, what? OMG, you better tell me everything." As Zora opened the car door, the driver handed her an envelope. "Mr. Jordan asked me to give you this." Inside was another check, this one for $5,000 with a note. "For a fresh start. Welcome to the team." MJ tears filled Zora's eyes. $5,000. That would cover new clothes for the job, maybe even a used car so she wouldn't have to take the bus. It would give them stability after the chaos of the past week. Upstairs, Zora stood in the middle of her small apartment, looking around at the worn furniture and peeling paint. For years, she'd been just surviving, scraping by from paycheck to paycheck. Now, suddenly, there was a future to plan for. A better job, better hours, a chance to make a difference while supporting her daughter's dreams. All because Michael Jordan had noticed her, had seen her not just as a waitress, but as a person worth knowing. Zora pulled out her phone to call Tanisha to pick up Amara. She couldn't wait to see her daughter's face when she told her the news, but as she dialed, a strange feeling made her look out the window. A car she didn't recognize was parked across the street, and a man was sitting inside, watching her building. The hopeful feeling Zora had carried from Jordan's office dimmed slightly. Something told her that her troubles with Vernon weren't over yet. She quickly stepped away from the window and called Tanisha. "I'm on my way to pick up Amara," Tanisha answered. How was the meeting? Amazing. Life-changing. But I'll tell you later, Zora replied, her eyes darting back to the window. Is Amara okay? She's great. Playing basketball with my nephew in the courtyard. What's wrong? You sound worried. There's a car watching my building. I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but after everything that's happened this week, not paranoid, just careful, Tanisha said firmly. Want me to keep Amara a bit longer? No, bring her home. I need to tell her about the job. Just maybe come up with her instead of dropping her off? On it. Be there in 20. Zora paced the small apartment, alternating between excitement about her new job and worry about the car outside. Was it really watching her building, or was she imagining things? When Tanisha and Amara arrived, Zora hugged her daughter extra tight. Mom, you're squishing me, Amara laughed. How was your meeting with Michael Jordan? Did he remember me? Sure did, Zora said, leading them both to the couch. Tanisha, there's juice in the fridge if you want. Once they were all settled, Zora took a deep breath. I have some big news, Amara. Mr. Jordan offered me a job. Amara's eyes widened. Working for him? Like Mr. Taylor? Not exactly like Mr. Taylor. I'll be working for his charity foundation, organizing basketball programs for kids who can't afford camps and equipment. That's amazing, Tanisha exclaimed. When do you start? 2 weeks from now. I need to give notice at the grocery store first, Zora explained. And the hours are normal daytime hours, so I'll be home in the evenings with you, Amara. Amara threw her arms around Zora's neck. No more night shifts? We can have dinner together every night? Every night, Zora promised, hugging her back. And there's more. Mr. Jordan has invited you to a special basketball clinic he's hosting next month. Just for kids he thinks have potential. Amara jumped up from the couch, her face a mixture of shock and joy. For real? Me? A Michael Jordan special clinic? For real, Zora confirmed with a smile. He was impressed by your photo. While Amara danced around the living room in excitement, Tanisha leaned closer to Zora. What about that car you mentioned? It's still there, Zora said quietly. Black sedan, tinted windows, just sitting there. Tanisha peeked out the window cautiously. That's weird. Want me to call my cousin Marcus? He's a security guard. Come check it out. Maybe later if it's still there. I don't want to worry Amara. But the car remained parked outside for the rest of the day. By evening, Zora was feeling increasingly uneasy. She kept the curtains closed and tried to focus on celebrating with Amara, but part of her mind remained fixed on the mysterious watcher. Chattatuthurn. Next 2 weeks flew by in a blur. Zora gave notice at the grocery store, bought a few new outfits for her job with some of the money from Jordan's check, and even put a deposit down on a used car a friend was selling. Gradually, she stopped seeing the black car, and her worries began to fade. Maybe it had been nothing after all, or maybe whoever it was had gotten bored when nothing interesting happened. Her last night at the grocery store, her co-workers threw her a small going-away party in the break room during their midnight lunch break. They gave her a card signed by everyone and a gift certificate to a department store for fancy office clothes. We're gonna miss you, Tanisha said, as they stocked shelves during their final hour. But I'm so happy for you. This is the break you deserve. I'll miss you too, Zora said sincerely. Thanks for helping me get this job when I needed it. At home that morning, Zora found she couldn't sleep. Tomorrow would be her first day at MJ Enterprises. She'd be working in an office, not a restaurant or grocery store. What if she wasn't good enough? What if Jordan regretted hiring her? Amara found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her new clothes laid out for tomorrow. "You're going to be awesome, Mom," Amara said, climbing onto her lap even though she was getting too big for it. "Mr. Jordan thinks so too, or he wouldn't have hired you." "When did you get so smart?" Zora asked, kissing the top of her head. "I get it from you," Amara replied with a grin. Zora's first day passed in a whirlwind of introductions, training, and information. She met her team, learned about the Foundation's programs, and began to understand what her job would entail. Everyone was welcoming, but it was overwhelming all the same. By the end of the week, though, she was beginning to find her rhythm. The Reed Ruby Foundation did amazing work, providing sports equipment, coaching, and safe places to play for kids who wouldn't otherwise have those opportunities. Zora found herself thinking of all the ways her own experiences as Amara's mom could help shape new programs. The best part was coming home at a normal time, having dinner with Amara, and hearing about her day at school. No more missing bedtime because of the night shift. No more sleeping during the day while life went on without her. "This is how it's supposed to be," Zora told Tanisha over lunch on Saturday. "I feel like a real mom again, not just someone paying the bills." Tanisha smiled. "You've always been a real mom, the best. But I'm glad things are easier now." As they were finishing their meal, Zora's phone rang. She didn't recognize the number. "Hello?" Silence on the other end. "Hello? Is anyone there?" More silence, then a click as the call ended. "Who was that?" Tanisha asked. "No one." They hung up. Zora frowned at her phone. Probably a wrong number. Yeah, probably. But the same thing happened twice more that weekend. Each time Zora would answer, hear nothing but silence. Then the caller would hang up. On Monday morning, as she walked to her car to drive to work, Zora noticed a piece of paper tucked under her windshield wiper. Thinking it was a flyer, she pulled it out. But it wasn't a flyer. It was a note, typed in plain black letters. "You don't belong there. Go back to waiting tables where you belong." A chill ran down Zora's spine. She looked around quickly, but the street was empty except for a few neighbors, leaving for work. At the office, Zora tried to focus on her job, but the note kept intruding on her thoughts. Who had left it? Was it connected to the silent phone calls? To the car watching her building? By Wednesday, Zora was jumping at every sound. That night, Tanisha came over for dinner, and after Amara went to bed, Zora showed her the note. "This is creepy," Tanisha said, frowning at the paper. "You need to tell someone." "Tell them what? That someone left a mean note on my car? That I got some silent phone calls? They'll think I'm being dramatic." "Then tell Jordan. He's the one who hired you. He should know if someone's harassing you." Zora sighed. "I can't go running to him with every little problem. I need to prove I can handle things myself." But the next day at work, Darius Taylor stopped by her office. "Ms. Wilson, do you have a moment?" "Of course," Zora said, setting aside the program proposal she was working on. Darius closed the door. "A security guard mentioned you seemed nervous in the parking garage yesterday. Is everything all right?" Zora hesitated. Then, making a decision, she opened her desk drawer and pulled out the note. "I found this on my car Monday morning," she said, handing it to him. "And I've been getting silent phone calls." Darius's expression darkened as he read the note. "How long has this been happening?" "The calls started last weekend. And before that, there was a car watching my apartment building. Why didn't you report this?" Zora looked down. "I didn't want to seem like I couldn't handle things, like I was bringing drama to my new job." "Ms. Wilson," "Zora," Darius said gently, "your safety is important to us, to Mr. Jordan personally. This isn't drama, it's harassment." He took out his phone and snapped a picture of the note. "I'm going to have security look into this. and I think we should tell Mr. Jordan." That afternoon, Zora found herself once again in Jordan's office, explaining about the car, the calls, and the note. Jordan listened carefully, his expression growing more concerned with each detail. "I think we both know who's behind this," he said when she finished. Zora nodded. "Vernon." Jordan leaned back in his chair, his expression serious. "I had hoped he would move on after you left the Golden Plate. Some people can't let go of their anger, especially when they feel someone has gotten something they didn't deserve." "I earned this job," Zora said firmly. "You absolutely did," Jordan agreed. "And Vernon has no right to harass you. I'm going to have security keep an eye on your apartment building, and we'll make sure someone walks you to your car after work." "Thank you," Zora said, relief washing over her. "I was worried you might think I was overreacting." "Never," Jordan said. "Threats should always be taken seriously." Later that evening, Zora checked her email before bed and saw a message from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Quit now." Her hand trembling slightly, she clicked to open it. "Ms. Wilson, it has come to my attention that you have secured employment with MJ Enterprises through questionable means. I have reason to believe you used contacts and information stolen from the Golden Plate to gain this position. This email serves as notice that I am prepared to take legal action unless you resign immediately. Your unethical behavior will not be rewarded. You have 48 hours to comply." Vernon Reeves, owner. The Golden Plate restaurant. Zora stared at the screen in disbelief. Stolen contacts? Questionable means? She had never even heard of the foundation until Jordan offered her the job. She quickly forwarded the email to Darius with a short message. "Just received this from Vernon. Thought you should know." Darius replied within minutes. "Thank you for sharing this. Please don't worry. Our legal team will handle it. Mr. Jordan has been informed." Despite Darius's reassurance, Zora slept poorly that night. Vernon's harassment was escalating from anonymous notes to direct threats. What would he do next? The following morning, Zora dropped Amara at school and headed to work. As she pulled into the parking garage, she noticed a familiar figure watching the building from across the street. Vernon. He wasn't even trying to hide. He stood on the sidewalk in his usual too-big suit, staring at the MJ Enterprises building with undisguised hatred. Zora reported the sighting to security as soon as she got inside. They checked the cameras and confirmed it was indeed Vernon. "We'll keep an eye on him," the security guard assured her. "If he comes onto the property, we'll escort him out." Throughout the day, Zora tried to focus on her work. She was developing a new program for single parents, creating a way for them to attend games and practices with their kids, even if they worked multiple jobs. It was important work she believed in. She wouldn't let Vernon's threats distract her. But that evening, when she went to her car, she discovered all 4 tires had been slashed. Security came immediately when she called. They reviewed the garage camera footage, but whoever had done it had stayed out of view of the cameras. "This is getting serious," the head of security told her. "Vandalism is a crime. We should file a police report." While they waited for the police, Darius arrived. "Mr. Jordan sent me to make sure you're okay," he explained. "He's arranging for a car to take you home, and we'll have your car fixed by tomorrow." The police took her statement and examined the car. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" the officer asked. Zora told them about Vernon, the note, the email, and seeing him watching the building that morning. "We'll look into it," the officer promised, making notes. "In the meantime, be careful. Document any further contact from this person." When Zora finally got home, There was a note on her windshield. "Quit now or things get worse." She showed it to the driver Jordan had sent, who immediately took a picture and reported it to security. Inside her apartment, Amara was waiting with Mrs. Jenkins from next door, who had picked her up from school. "Mom, what happened to our car?" Amara asked. "Mrs. Jenkins said someone sent a special car for me after school." Zora forced a smile. "Just some car trouble." Mr. Jordan was nice enough to help out. After Mrs. Jenkins left, Amara studied her mother's face. "You look worried. Is it about the mean man?" Zora blinked in surprise. "What mean man?" "Tanisha told her sister that your old boss was being mean to you. I heard them talking when I was supposed to be doing homework." Amara's eyes were serious. "Is he the one who broke our car?" Zora sighed. Amara was too smart to fool. "We don't know for sure. But yes, my old boss is angry with me. He doesn't think I should have my new job." "That's dumb," Amara said firmly. "You're the best at your job." "Mr. Jordan thinks so too." Zora pulled her daughter into a hug. "Thank you for believing in me." That night, after Amara went to bed, Zora got a call from Letitia, her friend from the Golden Plate. "Zora, I need to warn you," Letitia said, her voice hushed. "Vernon is on a rampage. He's been asking everyone about your new job, trying to find out details." "Why? What does he think he's going to find?" "He's convinced you must have blackmailed Jordan or something. You know how his mind works. He can't believe someone like you could get a job like that without something shady going on." Zora's grip tightened on the phone. "Someone like me? A single mom, a waitress. You know Vernon. He thinks the world revolves around him. When you got that job with Jordan, it made him look bad, like he fired someone valuable." "Which he did," Zora said dryly. "Exactly. But now he's trying to save face. He's even threatened to fire anyone who stays in contact with you." "That's ridiculous." "It gets worse," Letitia continued. "The restaurant's getting bad reviews online. Someone leaked that he fired a single mother unfairly, and customers are boycotting. Business is down, and he's blaming you." "I didn't write any reviews or tell anyone to boycott," Zora protested. "I know that. But Vernon needs someone to blame. Be careful, okay? He made some threats after drinking the other night. Said he was going to fix the problem, once and for all." After hanging up, Zora immediately called Darius and relayed what Letitia had told her. "I'm concerned about these threats," Darius said. "Let me talk to Mr. Jordan. We may need to take additional steps for your safety." The next day at work, Zora received a visitor in her office. It was Jordan's head of legal affairs, a formidable woman named Patricia Morgan. "Ms. Wilson, I've been asked to help address the situation with Vernon Reeves," she explained, setting a folder on Zora's desk. "We've drafted a cease and desist letter regarding his harassment, but we need your approval before sending it. Your cease." Zora read through the letter. She felt a mix of relief and worry. The legal language was firm, warning Vernon that further harassment would result in legal action. "Will this make him stop?" she asked. Patricia's expression was serious. "It might, or it might make him escalate. People like Vernon often get worse before they get better. That's why we want to discuss additional security measures with you." "What kind of measures?" "Mr. Jordan feels, and I agree, that it might be safer for you and your daughter to stay somewhere else temporarily, just until we resolve this situation." Zora's stomach knotted with fear. "Leave our home? Is it really that serious?" Patricia nodded grimly. "From what you've described, Vernon's behavior is becoming increasingly erratic. The slashed tires, the threatening notes. These indicate someone who is losing control." We want to ensure your safety before things get worse." Zora thought of Amara, innocently believing that everything would be okay because Mr. Jordan was helping them. What if Vernon did something truly dangerous? What did Mr. Jordan have in mind? She asked quietly. He has a guest house on his property, Patricia explained. It's private, secure, and has its own entrance. You and Amara would be safe there while we deal with Vernon. Zora's eyes widened. Stay at Michael Jordan's house? That's too much. It's not his main residence, Patricia clarified. It's a separate building on the grounds. Mr. Jordan rarely uses it except for visiting family. Still, I can't accept. Ms. Wilson, Patricia interrupted gently, this isn't charity, it's protection. Vernon knows where you live. He's already vandalized your car and left threatening notes. The next step could be something more dangerous. Zora thought about Amara, sleeping peacefully in her bed, unaware of the threats. What if Vernon decided to break in? What if he tried to hurt them? For how long? She asked. Just until we resolve the situation with Vernon. A week, maybe 2. Zora nodded slowly. All right, for Amara's safety. That evening, Zora sat Amara down to explain the situation as simply as she could. We need to stay somewhere else for a little while, she said. Mr. Jordan has offered us a place where we'll be safe. Amara's eyes grew wide. We're going to stay. At Michael Jordan's house? For real? It's a guest house on his property, Zora explained. Just temporarily. Does it have a basketball court? Amara asked excitedly. Zora couldn't help but smile. I don't know. Maybe. This is like a movie, Amara exclaimed, jumping up from the couch. First you get a cool job, and now we're staying. At Michael Jordan's house. It's not a vacation, Zora reminded her. It's because of some problems at work. We need to be somewhere safe for a little while. Amara's expression turned serious. Because of the mean man? Your old boss? Zora nodded. Yes, he's angry with me, and Mr. Jordan wants to make sure we're safe until things calm down. Is the mean man going to go to jail? I don't know, sweetie. Maybe. What he's doing is wrong and against the law. The next day, Darius arranged for their belongings to be moved while they were at work and school. By the time Zora picked up Amara, a car was waiting to take them to Jordan's property. The grounds were beyond anything Zora had imagined. A high stone wall surrounded the entire estate, with a security gate where a guard checked their names before letting them through. The driveway wound through beautiful gardens before splitting. One way leading to the main house, a massive structure visible in the distance, and the other to a smaller but still impressive guest house. The driver stopped at the guest house, where Darius was waiting to welcome them. Ms. Wilson, Amara, welcome, he said with a warm smile. Let me show you around. The guest house was bigger than their entire apartment. It had 2 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom, a spacious living room with a huge TV, and a kitchen stocked with food. Through the back windows, Zora could see a swimming pool, and, beyond that, a basketball court. The pool and court are for your use, Darius explained. The main house is through those trees, but Mr. Jordan respects your privacy. Security patrols the grounds 24/7, so you're completely safe here. Amara had already spotted the basketball court and was practically bouncing with excitement. Can I go play? Please, Mom? After we get settled in, Zora promised. When Darius left, Amara ran from room to room, exploring their temporary home. Mom! There's a basketball signed by the whole Bulls team in my room, and the TV is bigger than our whole wall at home. Zora sank onto the plush sofa, overwhelmed by the luxury surrounding them. Part of her felt uncomfortable accepting such generosity, but another part was deeply relieved. Here, Vernon couldn't reach them. Here, Amara was safe. That evening, as Amara practiced on the basketball court, Zora heard someone approaching. She turned to see Michael Jordan walking toward them, dressed casually in jeans and a polo shirt. "Ms. Wilson," he called. "I hope you're finding everything comfortable." "It's incredible," Zora said honestly. "More than we deserve. Thank you." Jordan smiled, watching Amara shoot baskets. "She's got good form." Amara had frozen when she saw Jordan, the basketball clutched in her hands, her mouth open in shock. "Amara," Zora called. "Come say hello to Mr. Jordan." Slowly, Amara walked over, her eyes never leaving Jordan's face. "Hello, Mr. Jordan," she said in a small voice. "Thank you for letting us stay at your house." "You're very welcome," Jordan replied with a warm smile. "I hear you're attending basketball camp this summer." Amara nodded, still wide-eyed. "Yes, sir, and your special clinic next month." "I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do," Jordan said. Then he gestured to the basketball in her hands. "Mind if I join you for a few shots?" Amara's face lit up like it was Christmas morning. "Really? You want to play with me?" For the next 30 minutes, Michael Jordan patiently showed Amara some shooting techniques, correcting her form and encouraging her efforts. Zora watched from the sidelines, her heart full. Despite all the trouble with Vernon, this moment made everything worthwhile, seeing her daughter learning from her hero. Before leaving, Jordan turned to Zora. "I want you to know we're handling the situation with Vernon. I'm meeting with him tomorrow at the Golden Plate." Zora's stomach tightened with worry. "Is that safe? He seems unstable." "I'll have security with me," Jordan assured her. "Sometimes, these situations need a direct approach. Vernon needs to understand that his behavior has consequences." "I don't want you to get in trouble because of me," Zora said. "This is my problem." Jordan shook his head. "When someone uses my name to justify their bad actions, it becomes my problem too. And when they threaten someone I respect, I can't stand by and do nothing." After Jordan left, Amara couldn't stop talking about the impromptu basketball lesson. "He said I have natural talent, Mom. Michael Jordan said that about me." "He's right," Zora said, hugging her daughter. "You're amazing." That night, as Amara slept in her luxurious temporary bedroom, Zora sat by the window, looking out at the security lights that illuminated the property. She felt safe here, protected by walls and guards and Jordan's influence. But she couldn't help worrying about tomorrow's meeting. What would Vernon do when confronted by Jordan? Would he back down, or would it make him even angrier? Her phone buzzed with a text from Tanisha. "Heard you're staying at Jordan's place. Girl, you are living a dream right now." Zora smiled and typed back, "It's beautiful, but strange. I feel like I'm in someone else's life." "You deserve every bit of this," Tanisha replied, "after everything you've been through." "BTW, did you hear about the Golden Plate?" "No, what happened?" "Online reviews are killing them." Someone posted about Vernon firing a single mom after Jordan visited, and it went viral. They had to close early, tonight, because no one showed up for dinner service. Zora felt a twinge of guilt, even though she hadn't written any reviews or encouraged the boycott. She didn't want the other employees to suffer because of Vernon's actions. "That's terrible for the staff," she texted. "Don't worry about us. We're all updating our resumes. Nobody wants to work for Vernon anyway." The next morning, Zora drove Amara to school in a car Jordan had loaned her, then headed to work. Everyone at the foundation treated her normally, as if it wasn't strange that she was temporarily living on their boss's property. Around noon, Darius came to her office. "Mr. Jordan asked me to update you. He's meeting Vernon at the Golden Plate at 2 p.m. today." "Thank you for letting me know," Zora said, trying to hide her nervousness. "He also said to tell you that Vernon's lawyer contacted our legal team this morning. He's making noise about suing you for defamation, claiming you're behind the bad reviews and boycott." Zora's heart sank. "But I haven't written any reviews or told anyone to boycott." "We know that," Darius assured her. "Our lawyers already responded, making it clear that any legal action against you would be met with a countersuit for harassment. I don't think Vernon's lawyer will pursue it further." As the afternoon wore on, Zora found it hard to concentrate on her work. Her mind kept returning to the meeting happening at the Golden Plate. What was Vernon saying? How was Jordan handling it? At 3:30, her phone rang. It was Jordan. "Ms. Wilson, are you available to join us at the Golden Plate?" he asked, his voice calm but serious. "Now?" Zora asked, surprised. "Yes, I think it's important for you to be part of this conversation. I've already cleared it with your supervisor." Zora hesitated. The thought of facing Vernon made her stomach churn. But she couldn't hide forever. "I'll be there," she said, gathering her courage. As she grabbed her purse and headed for the door, she had a sudden impulse. She opened her desk drawer and took out an old voice recorder her father had given her years ago for protection. Without knowing exactly why, she slipped it into her purse. Something told her she might need it. The drive to the Golden Plate took 20 minutes. With each mile, Zora's nervousness grew. She hadn't been back to the restaurant since the day Vernon fired her. The thought of facing him made her hands shake on the steering wheel. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. "You're not alone. This time." The restaurant's parking lot was nearly empty when she arrived. In the middle of the afternoon, between lunch and dinner service, the Golden Plate would normally be closed. But today, a black SUV with tinted windows sat near the entrance. Jordan's car, she guessed. Zora parked beside it and took a deep breath. Before getting out, she reached into her purse and switched on the voice recorder, tucking it into her jacket pocket, just in case. The restaurant's front door was unlocked. As Zora stepped inside, the familiar smell of garlic and butter brought back memories of long shifts, aching feet, and Vernon's critical eyes following her every move. Voices came from the back, Jordan's deep, calm tone, and another voice, higher and angry. Vernon. Zora walked through the empty dining room toward Vernon's office. The door was open, and inside she could see Jordan sitting calmly in a chair. Two large men in suits, security guards, stood near the door. Vernon paced behind his desk, his face red and sweaty. "Ms. Wilson," Jordan said when he saw her, standing to greet her. "Thank you for coming." Vernon stopped pacing. His eyes narrowed when he saw Zora. "What is she doing here? This is private property." "I invited her," Jordan said calmly. "Since we're discussing a situation that directly involves her, it seemed appropriate for her to be present." "Nothing about this is appropriate," Vernon snapped. "You're trying to destroy my business. Both of you." Zora stepped into the office, careful to stay near the security guards. "I haven't done anything to hurt your business, Vernon. I haven't written reviews or told anyone to boycott." "Liar!" Vernon slammed his hand on the desk. "My restaurant is empty because of you." Customers cancel reservations when they hear your sob story about the poor single mom fired after meeting Jordan. "That's exactly what happened," Zora said quietly. "You fired me for talking to Mr. Jordan about my daughter, even though he asked me questions first." Vernon's face grew even redder. You were unprofessional. You broke policy. Jordan held up a hand. Mr. Reeves, we've been over this. I initiated the conversation with Ms. Wilson. I asked to see her daughter's photo. I left. The tip and autograph of my own free will. So she says, Vernon muttered. So I say, Jordan corrected, his voice firm. And now you're harassing her, watching her home, vandalizing her car, leaving threatening notes. Vernon's eyes darted between them. I don't know what you're talking about. I never touched her car. We have evidence suggesting otherwise, Jordan said. The point is, this behavior needs to stop. Now. Or what? Vernon challenged, a hint of desperation in his voice. You'll ruin me. It's already happening. My restaurant is dying because of her. Because of you, Jordan corrected. You fired a valued employee without cause, using my name as an excuse. That was your choice. Vernon sank into his chair, sweat beading on his forehead. What do you want? From me? Money? I can't afford to pay her much. Business is bad. This isn't about money, Zora said. I have a good job now. I just want you to stop harassing me and my daughter. Vernon's eyes narrowed. Your job? He spat. A charity case from your rich new friend here. Jordan's expression hardened. Ms. Wilson earned her position through her character and work ethic. Something you seem unable to recognize. Please, Vernon scoffed. We all know why you hired her. She's a project, a way to boost your public image. Zora felt heat rise in her cheeks. That's not true. I work hard at my job. I've already developed new programs for the foundation. Programs for what? For other charity cases like you? Vernon's voice grew louder. Single moms wanting handouts instead of working their way up like the rest of us? The room fell silent. Jordan stared at Vernon, his expression unreadable. The security guards shifted slightly, moving closer to Vernon's desk. Is that how you see her? Jordan asked quietly. As a charity case because she's a single mother? Vernon seemed to realize he'd gone too far. He backpedaled quickly. I didn't mean it like that. I just meant— I think you meant exactly what you said, Jordan interrupted. And I think it reveals a lot about why you really fired Ms. Wilson. Vernon stood up again, his hands shaking. Look, I built this restaurant from nothing. 15 years of work. And now it's falling apart because he jabbed a finger toward Zora, got special treatment. Everyone always does. People like her. Sensing he might say something even more revealing, Zora asked, People like me? Vernon's control finally snapped. Single moms always wanting special treatment. And then you come in, he turned to Jordan, a black man with money, and suddenly she thinks she deserves more than what I pay her. The room fell completely silent. Zora felt her breath catch. Vernon's true feelings were finally out in the open. His prejudice against both single mothers and black people with success. Jordan stood up slowly, his tall frame towering over Vernon. Thank you for being honest, Vernon. Now I'll be honest too. His voice was calm but cold. I own this building. Vernon's face went pale. What? My investment company bought this building 6 months ago. We kept all the existing tenants, including you. I'm your landlord. Vernon sank back into his chair, the fight gone from him. That's not possible. Jordan handed him a folder. Property records, lease agreements. My name is listed under MJ Holdings, but it's all there. Vernon's hands trembled as he opened the folder and scanned the documents. Why didn't I know about this? There was no reason for you to know. Nothing changed in your lease terms. Jordan's expression was stern. Until now. Zora watched, amazed at this unexpected turn. Jordan owned the building? He'd been Vernon's landlord all this time? As your landlord, Jordan continued, I have the right to review all complaints against business owners in my properties. Did you know 5 other employees have filed complaints about your treatment? Vernon's head snapped up. That's a lie. Is it? Jordan nodded to one of the security guards, who handed him another folder. Statements from former employees describing unfair terminations, withheld tips, and discriminatory comments. Sound familiar? Vernon said nothing, his face ashen. None had enough evidence for legal action, Jordan continued. Until now. He turned to Zora. Ms. Wilson, did you by any chance record this conversation? Zora's hand went to her pocket where the voice recorder sat. How had he known? Yes, she admitted. I did. Jordan smiled slightly. Smart woman. That's illegal, Vernon protested. You can't record me without consent. Actually, in this state, only one party needs to consent to a recording, Jordan explained. And I believe we have your discriminatory statements on record now, don't we, Ms. Wilson? Zora nodded. I think so. Vernon's shoulders slumped in defeat. What happens now? You sue me? Take my restaurant? I lose everything? Jordan and Zora exchanged a look. Then Jordan sat down across from Vernon. That depends on you, he said. I'm prepared to offer you a choice. Vernon eyed Jordan suspiciously. What kind of choice? Option 1. You sell the restaurant to me at a fair market price. You sign a non-disclosure agreement. You walk away with money in your pocket and find a new start somewhere else. No lawsuit, no public scandal. Vernon's eyebrows rose slightly. He clearly hadn't expected an offer to buy the restaurant. And option 2? Option 2, Jordan continued calmly. We go public with the recording of your discriminatory comments, the employee complaints, and the evidence of your harassment against Ms. Wilson. We file a lawsuit that will drag on for years and cost you everything. Vernon's face flushed again. You're threatening me. I'm giving you a choice, Jordan corrected. A fair one, considering your actions. Vernon looked at Zora with hatred in his eyes. This was your plan all along, wasn't it? Get Jordan to buy my restaurant? Take everything I've worked for? Zora shook her head. I didn't know any of this until right now. I didn't even know Mr. Jordan owned the building. It's true, Jordan confirmed. Ms. Wilson had nothing to do with this offer. This is between you and me. Vernon slumped in his chair, the fight going out of him again. How much? He asked dully. I'll have my team prepare a fair offer based on the restaurant's value, Jordan said. You'll have 48 hours to accept or decline. And if I decline, then we proceed with option 2. Jordan's voice was firm. The lawsuit, the public disclosure, all of it. The room fell silent as Vernon considered his options. Zora could almost see the wheels turning in his head as he weighed the choices before him. Finally, Vernon spoke. I want double the market value. Jordan smiled slightly. That's not how this works, Mr. Reeves. You're not in a position to negotiate. The restaurant has sentimental value, Vernon insisted, a hint of his usual arrogance returning. My father left me the money to start it. The offer will be fair, Jordan said firmly. No more, no less. Vernon glared at both of them. Fine, I'll take the deal, not like I have much choice. One more thing, Jordan added. You'll need to make a public apology to Ms. Wilson and the other employees you've mistreated. Absolutely not! Vernon's face reddened again. I'm selling you the restaurant. That should be enough. It's not about the restaurant, Zora said quietly. It's about acknowledging the harm you've done. I haven't done anything wrong. Vernon insisted. Jordan sighed. I think we have the recording that proves otherwise, Mr. Reeves. Vernon's shoulders slumped in defeat. Fine. I'll apologize. Can I go now? One last thing, Jordan said. What happens to your current employees when you sell? Vernon shrugged. Not my problem anymore. Actually, it is your problem, Jordan said, because how you handle this transition will affect the final offer. Vernon rolled his eyes. What do you want me to do? Give them all gold watches? I want you to ensure they keep their jobs during the transition, Jordan said. No firing anyone out of spite. Zora watched as Vernon reluctantly agreed. She could hardly believe what was happening. Just 2 weeks ago, this man had fired her and thrown her life into chaos. Now he was the one losing his restaurant. If there's nothing else, Vernon said, standing up, I have a business to run. What's left of it anyway? Jordan nodded to the security guards, who opened the door for Vernon to leave. As soon as he was gone, Zora let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Are you okay? Jordan asked her. Yes, she said. I can't believe this is happening. Are you really buying his restaurant? Jordan nodded. I've been concerned about the Golden Plate for some time. The employee complaints were already on my radar as the building owner. Your situation just accelerated my decision to act. What will happen to it? Zora asked. To the restaurant, I mean. That depends, Jordan said with a smile. I have an idea, but I'd like to hear your thoughts first. They moved from Vernon's office to a table in the empty dining room. Sitting across from Jordan in the familiar space felt surreal to Zora. The last time she'd been here, she was serving his table. Now they were discussing the future of the restaurant itself. The employees here are good people, Zora said. Hard-working. They deserve better than Vernon. I agree, Jordan said, which is why I'm considering something different than a traditional ownership model. He explained his idea, converting the Golden Plate into a worker-owned cooperative, where the employees would share ownership and profits. Jordan's company would provide the initial investment and training, but ultimately, the staff would run the business themselves. And, he added, I'd like to offer you a position on the management board, if you're interested. Zora's eyes widened. Me? But I already work for your foundation. This would be part-time, advisory, Jordan explained. Using your experience here to help guide the transition. You know these people. You know this place. Your insight would be valuable. Zora thought about Letitia and Chef Marco and the other staff who had become like family during her years at the restaurant. The idea of helping them become owners rather than just employees was exciting. I'd be honored, she said. But are you sure the cooperative model can work? It's worked in other restaurants, Jordan assured her. With the right support and training, I believe the staff here can make it successful. As they continued discussing details, Letitia arrived for her evening shift, stopping in shock when she saw Zora sitting with Michael Jordan. Zora, what are you doing here? And, Mr. Jordan? Jordan smiled and stood. You must be Letitia. Zora has spoken highly of you. Letitia's mouth opened and closed without words coming out. We have some news, Zora said, grinning at her friend's shocked expression. Big changes are coming to the Golden Plate. Over the next hour, other staff members arrived for the dinner shift. Jordan and Zora shared the plan with each of them. At first, there was disbelief, then excitement as they realized the opportunity being offered. We would own the restaurant? Together? Chef Marco asked, his usual gruff expression softening. That's the idea, Jordan confirmed. Each of you would have an ownership stake. You'd share in the decisions and the profits. "What about Vernon?" Leticia asked. "He's selling," Zora explained. "He'll be gone once the deal is finalized." A cheer went up from the staff. Vernon had not been a beloved boss. As the excitement continued around them, Jordan turned to Zora. "This is just the beginning," he said. "There will be challenges ahead as they learn to run the business. But they'll have support," Zora said confidently. "And they'll be working for themselves, not for someone who doesn't value them." Jordan nodded. "Exactly. Just like you found a job where your talents are valued." Zora smiled. "It's like a circle closing. From being fired unfairly to helping create a place where that won't happen to others." Later that evening, as they prepared to leave, Zora took one last look around the restaurant where she had spent so many hours. It didn't feel like her place anymore. That chapter of her life was closed. But a new chapter was beginning. For her, for the staff of the Golden Plate, and even, in a way, for Vernon, who would have to start over somewhere else. "Ready to go?" Jordan asked. Zora nodded. "More than ready." As they walked out, Zora remembered the voice recorder still in her pocket. She pulled it out and showed it to Jordan. "How did you know I was recording?" she asked. Jordan smiled. "I didn't, but I hoped you might be. You strike me as someone who prepares for important moments." "My father gave me this years ago," Zora explained. "He called it protection. I never really used it until today." "Your father sounds like a wise man," Jordan said. Zora nodded, a distant memory stirring in her mind. He always said to be ready for the moment when truth needs to be heard. As they reached their cars, Jordan paused. "The guest house is still available for you and Amara until we're sure Vernon has accepted the deal and moved on." "Thank you," Zora said. "But I think it's time we went home. I can't keep hiding. And Amara misses her own bed." Jordan nodded in understanding. "I'll make sure security keeps an eye on your apartment for the next few weeks, just to be safe." As Zora drove home, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. The confrontation was over. Vernon would be gone. The restaurant would become something better. And she had stood her ground, with Jordan's support, but also with her own strength. She couldn't wait to tell Amara. When Zora arrived home, Amara was already there with Tanisha's sister, working on homework at the kitchen table. "Mom!" Amara jumped up for a hug. "How was the meeting? Did you see the mean man?" "I did," Zora said, setting down her purse. "And guess what? He won't be bothering us anymore." While Amara finished her homework, Zora thanked Tanisha's sister for watching her. After she left, Zora sat down with Amara and explained what had happened at the Golden Plate, simplifying the complicated parts. "So, Mr. Jordan is buying the restaurant?" Amara asked, eyes wide. "And giving it to the workers?" "Something like that," Zora confirmed. "They'll all own it together, like a team." "That's so cool," Amara exclaimed. "Is Chef Marco happy? He always gave me extra bread when I came to visit you." "He's very happy," Zora assured her. "Everyone is." That night, after tucking Amara into her own bed for the first time in days, Zora felt a deep sense of peace. The threat of Vernon was ending. Her job at the foundation was going well. Amara was thriving. Life was finally on the right track. The next morning, Jordan's legal team sent over the papers for Vernon to review. The offer was fair, as promised. Not the double value Vernon had demanded, but enough for him to start over somewhere else if he managed the money wisely. A week later, Vernon accepted the deal. He signed the sales agreement, the non-disclosure agreement, and even issued a brief public apology to Zora and other former employees, though it sounded forced and insincere. With Vernon officially out of the picture, Zora and the staff of the Golden Plate, soon to be renamed Community Table, began the process of transitioning to the worker-owned model. Jordan's team provided experts to train them in business management, accounting, and cooperative governance. Zora attended planning meetings 2 evenings a week, offering her insights and helping to create a more supportive work environment than the one Vernon had maintained. It felt good to use her experiences, both bad and good, to help others succeed. 6 months flew by. Community Table opened to rave reviews, with Chef Marco's menu getting special praise. The cooperative model attracted media attention, bringing in curious customers who returned for the excellent food and service. Zora split her time between the foundation job and her advisory role at the restaurant. Both were fulfilling in different ways. At the foundation, she had created special programs for single parents, using her own experiences to identify needs others might miss. At Community Table, she helped the staff learn to work together as owners, not just employees. Amara had attended both the basketball camp and Jordan's special clinic, showing such promise that she'd been invited to join an elite youth league. Zora used some of her new income to hire a private coach for additional training once a week. Life had transformed so completely from that terrible day when Vernon fired her that sometimes Zora could hardly believe it had only been 6 months. One evening, as she finished up paperwork at Community Table before heading home, Jordan stopped by for a surprise visit. He occasionally checked in on the restaurant, proud of how the cooperative experiment was working. "Ms. Wilson," he greeted her warmly, "how are things going?" "Wonderfully," she replied honestly. "The staff is really taking ownership, literally and figuratively. Profits are up 20% from Vernon's last quarter." "I've noticed," Jordan said with a smile. "This place has a different energy now. Positive. Welcoming." They walked through the busy dining room, where Letitia and the other servers moved efficiently between tables. The restaurant was full, with a waiting list for tables on weekends. "We're planning a special dinner next week," Zora told him. "A 6-month celebration of Community Table's new beginning. We'd be honored if you could attend." "I wouldn't miss it," Jordan said. "I've invited some investors who are interested in funding similar cooperative conversions in other restaurants." They stepped outside into the cool evening air. The restaurant's new sign glowed warmly in the twilight. Community Table. Worker-owned since 2024. "I wanted to thank you again," Zora said as they stood by their cars, "for everything you've done. For believing in me. For helping create all this." She gestured toward the restaurant. Jordan smiled. "You earned it, Ms. Wilson. I just opened a door. You walked through it and brought others with you." Zora nodded, but a question that had been on her mind for months finally found its way to her lips. "But why? Why did you help me so much? You barely knew me." Jordan was quiet for a moment, looking at her thoughtfully. Then he seemed to make a decision. "Your father saved my life once." Zora froze. "My father? But he died when I was a teenager." Jordan nodded. "James Wilson. He was a security guard at a Chicago event I attended early in my career. He spotted someone with a weapon in the crowd and tackled them before they could hurt anyone." Memories rushed through Zora's mind. Her father in his security uniform, coming home late from events, sometimes with bruises he wouldn't explain. "Your father never wanted recognition," Jordan continued. "He said he was just doing his job. But I never forgot his face." He looked at Zora closely. "When I saw you at the restaurant, you looked just like him. I wasn't sure until I saw the name on your tag." Tears filled Zora's eyes. "He never mentioned saving you, never said anything about it." "He was a humble man," Jordan said, "a hero who didn't need credit. I tried to thank him properly at the time, but he refused any reward." Jordan looked out at the Chicago skyline. "I've been looking for his family for years to thank them, but he used a different name then, James Williams, for security reasons. When I finally found you by chance, and then heard you were fired because of me, I knew I had to make it right." "The voice recorder," Zora whispered. "He gave it to me just before he died. Said it might protect me someday." Jordan smiled. "And it did. Your father was still looking out for you, even after all these years." Zora wiped away tears. "He would be proud of all this? Of Community Table? Of Amara's basketball? He would be proud of you," Jordan corrected gently. "Of the strength you've shown, the leadership, the compassion for others." As Zora drove home that night, her father's face filled her thoughts. All these years, she had carried his memory, his lessons, his voice recorder, never knowing the full story of his heroism. Now his legacy had come full circle, protecting her when she needed it most. The night of Community Table's 6-month celebration arrived with excitement and pride. The restaurant was closed to regular customers, filled instead with staff members, their families, Jordan's invited investors, and local media covering the success story. Zora arrived early with Amara, who wore a new dress for the special occasion. The dining room had been transformed with flowers and soft lighting. The tables arranged in a large U-shape so everyone could see each other. "Mom, look!" Amara pointed to a wall near the entrance that Zora hadn't noticed before. The staff had created a journey wall with photos showing the restaurant's transformation. In the center was a picture of Zora from her waitressing days, smiling as she carried plates to a table. "We wanted to honor where it all started," Letitia explained, coming up beside them. "You're the reason we have this opportunity, Zora." Zora shook her head. "I just happened to be in the right place at the right time." "No," Letitia insisted. "You stood up to Vernon. You didn't back down. That inspired all of us." The celebration dinner was everything they had hoped for. Chef Marco outdid himself with a special menu showcasing his best dishes. The staff served each course with pride, no longer just employees, but owners of their workplace. When dessert was finished, Jordan stood to speak. The room quieted immediately. 6 months ago, he began, this restaurant was struggling under poor management and a toxic work environment. Today, it's thriving as a model of what's possible when workers are treated with respect and given real ownership. He gestured around the room. Community Table isn't just a new name. It's a new way of doing business, one that values the contributions of every person who works here. Jordan then invited each staff member to stand and be recognized for their role in the cooperative's success. When he came to Zora, his voice grew warmer. And Zora Wilson, whose insight and leadership helped guide this transition, who showed us all what resilience looks like in the face of unfair treatment. The room erupted in applause. Amara beamed with pride beside her mother. The success we're celebrating tonight, Jordan continued, is just the beginning. The investors here have committed to funding 10 more restaurant conversions to worker-owned cooperatives across Chicago in the coming year. More applause filled the room. What had started as one unfair firing had sparked a movement that would create better workplaces for hundreds of people. After Jordan's speech, Zora was surprised when Letitia asked her to come to the front. The entire staff gathered around her. "We have something for you," Chef Marco said, handing her a small wooden box, a token of our appreciation. Inside the box was a beautiful silver bracelet. Engraved on it were the words, "From one small moment, great change can grow." "We all chipped in," Letitia explained, "to thank you for everything." Tears filled Zora's eyes as she hugged each staff member. They had become more than colleagues. They were a community, just like their restaurant's name suggested. Later, as the celebration continued, Zora stepped outside for a moment of quiet. The night air was cool and clear, the city lights twinkling around her. Jordan joined her, leaning against the wall beside her. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Zora smiled. "I was just thinking about how much has changed in 6 months, from being fired and worried about paying rent to all this." She gestured toward the restaurant. "Life can change quickly," Jordan agreed. "Sometimes for the worse, but sometimes for the better." "I keep thinking about my father," Zora admitted. "How proud he would be of Amara, of what's happened here." "He would be," Jordan said. "Your father was a quiet man, but I remember the determination in his eyes when he acted that day. You have the same look when you're fighting for something important." Inside, they could see Amara showing some of her basketball moves to the children. Of other staff members, her face bright with confidence and joy. "The scholarship program for the children of single parents is going well," Zora told Jordan. "We've already approved 15 kids for sports camps this summer." The program had been Zora's first major initiative at the foundation, creating opportunities for children like Amara, whose parents might not otherwise be able to afford specialized training. "It's making a difference," Jordan said. "Just like Community Table is." As the evening wound down, Jordan addressed the group one final time. He told them the story of how a simple compliment at the Golden Plate had led to this moment, how Zora's unfair firing had ultimately created something better for everyone. "Sometimes what seems like an ending is actually a beginning," he concluded. Community Table is proof of that. After the guests had gone and only the staff remained, they gathered in a circle, arms around each other's shoulders. "To new beginnings," Chef Marco said, raising a glass. "And to the journey that brought us here," Letitia added. Zora looked around, at these people who had once been just co-workers but were now partners in a shared dream. She thought about her father, whose hidden act of heroism had somehow set all this in motion years before. She thought about Amara, whose future now held possibilities that once seemed out of reach. "To community," Zora said, raising her glass, to join the toast. Later that night, as she tucked an exhausted Amara into bed, her daughter asked sleepily, "Mom, are you happy now?" Zora brushed the hair from Amara's forehead. "Very happy." "Me too," Amara murmured, her eyes already closing. "I like our new life." After Amara fell asleep, Zora sat in the living room of their apartment. The same apartment where she had once worried about making rent, where she had canceled Amara's basketball camp, where she had received that first mysterious visit from Darius Taylor that changed everything. On the wall hung a new picture, her father in his security uniform, smiling proudly. Beside it was the voice recorder he had given her, now framed as a reminder of how his protection had extended far beyond his lifetime. From one unexpected compliment had come not just a new job, but a revelation about her father's hidden heroism, a new beginning for an entire community of workers, and a future bright with possibility for her daughter. Zora touched the bracelet on her wrist, reading the words again. "From one small moment, great change can grow." How true that had turned out to be! Thanks for joining me for Single Black Mom Fired. After Michael Jordan compliments her, 48 hours later, he destroys her boss. I hope you enjoyed this story of resilience, justice, and unexpected second chances. Where are you listening from today? Drop your location in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Want more inspiring stories like this one? Click on the video appearing on your screen right now. I've got plenty more tales of justice and triumph that I think you'll love. Until next time.